And now I would like to invite for the fourth session, incentives and other regulatory tools for increasing the renewable energy penetration in the society. And we are glad that Director Dörte Fouquet from the European Renewable Energy Federation in Belgium will participate today and talk about the updates of the new Green Deal in Europe. Welcome, Dörte. Oh, you are.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Morten. Hello, everybody. And it's a big pleasure to be with you again. And I hope I can bring some interesting news from Brussels. Before all, I'm sure many speakers have referred to, it's a bit strange and bad for the heart to think that Preben is not even there somewhere in the background. But we have to continue, but we miss him a lot also on the European level. So having said that, I will try to share. If not, could you help me in uploading then? And then I have to give the, I will see. I have not. So,
this one, yeah. We can share it, Dörte. Is that all right?
I think it's better you share it before we lose any more time.
We'll do that.
Sorry for that.
No problem, no problem.
The next time before the meeting, I will have a training session from my iPad, and so we can start. I think with maybe a very brief, the second slide already. If you can continue.
Just a moment.
Yeah, voilà. So that's who I am. It's nothing special. It's my pleasure since many years now that I'm helping RF, so the voice of independent Association of Independent Power Producers from all renewable sources, with the European policies and also with good translation of European policies and law into member states policies and vice versa. And I helped even setting up RF in the last century. So we are still, I think we have a good standing in Europe being a pertinent and independent voice. We can go to the next slide. Please. So I would, on the next slide, I would like to talk a little bit about the target architecture and in the EU Climate Change Act, since there are colleagues at this meeting who are not directly from the European Union or not always involved in the union business when it comes to energy policy and renewables. I could say that with the new Commission and the new President of the Commission, Europe is getting a little bit more ambitious to focus really on reaching the Paris Agreement targets. And it is called, the slogan is the new Green Deal in Europe. And the first thing this new Commission set up was to figure out that we do not have a dedicated climate legislation, so a climate act in one piece, which would translate the targets. So the Commission came up with a proposal, and this is a little bit the architecture. The act is not yet through, but this is the current architecture, which you will see here, and the steps are until 2050. I leave this for you for later reading, and we can come back for the details on the next slide, please. So this climate law draft, not the law itself, was adopted by the Commission in March 2020, as I said, as part of the Green Deal. The European Parliament, in that deal, we had at least 55% greenhouse gas emission reduction target by 2030. For the European Parliament, that was not enough, and the Parliament asked for up to recently 60% reduction target. What followed, there was the first legislative procedure in the parliament, there were the meetings of the council, and in the end, each institution came up with its amendments. And what then happens in Europe, it goes in the so-called trilogue, so where the European Commission, the Council, so the representatives of the member states, and the European Parliament representatives negotiate a deal to make to come to a conclusion. And we had quite some rounds of this trilogue meetings and negotiations. And there was a very long trilogue which started on the 20th of April and ended, I think, around 5 o'clock on the 21st of April, so some days ago. And that means we have now a preliminary agreement, and we are waiting for the publication of the consolidated text. What will happen after that is that we will have a formal confirmation by the member states in the council and by the parliament. We envisage that should be around June 21. So we are almost there to have a first climate law. And we can go to the next slide. What was agreed? That is maybe what's the most important. The key points, I would say, they have agreed on the targets and on the ambitions also beyond 2050. They have introduced, on pressure of the European Parliament, an interim target and also certain pathway towards a CO2 budget envisaged to have it in mid-2024. We have linear target paths between 2030 and 2050. We have a governance system. Some may recall under the current Renewable Energy Directive recast in Europe, the RED II, under that is a governance regulation. And that governance regulation helps to get more straightforward policies and more accountability of member states, because unfortunately, in comparison or in difference to previous renewable energy legislation, we do not have any longer binding national targets. We only have an overall binding European renewable targets until 2030 of 32%. So that's for that we have this governance instrument, and our climate act will be done in a way, it will be a regulation, and it will be a regulation in completely amending the current governance regulation. That's also important to know. We have also, on pressure by the European Parliament, a new kid on the block, a so-called scientific advisory board. I come to that. We talk a lot about climate mainstreaming, so getting everybody on board. And there are some sectoral roadmaps and openings for adaptation processes. One can also ask what has not been agreed upon, that we also will have in this act or regulation climate neutrality also for member states imposed. It's an overall climate neutrality again of the European Union. We do not have a ban explicitly on fossil subsidies. There are only some notions apparently in recitals. We also have not an explicit right to climate protection, but we have openings to that in the so-called recitals. Can go to the next slide. A little bit, we got it from the horse mouth, the morning after the night, so to say, from within the European Parliament. And you can read it later, because I think it's very interesting, because yes, they only could agree on this 55% target, so what the Commission had asked for. But there was always the question, is this target correctly established? And so we have a direct emission reduction target now from 52.8% compared to 1990. And we have further 2.2%, which should be removed from the atmosphere by forests and other natural things. That's so far so good. But as you all know, we have not really a turning point of deforestation. And we also, it seems to be forgotten in all that calculation of the Commission in its impact assessment that in these natural disasters, we do have a lot of of wood fires and burning forests, which are then lost, and in the moment of that crisis increase even the CO2 situation in the atmosphere. So anyhow, we have this net 55% deal. International shipping and aviation are not included in this target, obviously. That's at least the Parliament thinks. They say they got some vague wording in a recital, so that there could be further action, maybe even as part of the June package. I come to that a little bit later, to reduce emission also from shipping and aviation. And on the next slide, I can give informal overview on key points. Again, the neutrality objective we have. The greenhouse gas, there is a budget agreed of greenhouse gas emission, but only for the time between 2030 and 2050. So we have to see what we do in the mid times. We have the volume of this net greenhouse gas emissions to be emitted in 2030 to 2050 should in any case not putting at risk the Union's commitment under the Paris Agreement. So we have to see. So there is still a little bit of unclarity about the greenhouse gas budget for the next decade, as I just said, and we can go to the next slide. Yes, we will get a so-called independent EU Scientific Advisory Board on climate change. The Parliament had said EU Climate Change Council, which I would have also found a stronger word. The scientific advisory boards, they have let's say they have a strange history in the European Union. Some are worse, that title, and some are more like incumbent industry, self-fulfilling prophets in a way. Okay, we have to work on that. We also, as NGOs and stakeholders, have to make a noise about it. There should be apparently 15 scientific experts, maximum 2 per same member state, mandate of 4 years, and nominated by the management board, which I find quite good, of the European Environmental Agency in Copenhagen, selected on merit and excellence. We'll see. So we can go to the next slide. The Commission, the Council had agreed then finally in trilogue that we can have some wording that all future legislative proposals, including budgetary proposals of the Union, should be consistent with the 2030 target and the climate neutrality objective. The Energy Charter Treaty, there was a new amendment to ensure that the Commission will further define how to monitor member states' objectives to phase out. But again, as I said before, there is no common methodology. And in the end, the EP dropped its amendment on the Energy Charter Treaty, which was much more explicit. And also it dropped, which is a pity, the amendment on access to justice. You may have followed that the European Court of Justice has now in recent cases said no for a right of standing for private persons, even from outside the European Union, or other interested groups to go against industry emitting too much and for danger for the climate. So we have still this access to justice for independent voices at the European Court of Justice, as we have it in many member states as well, but not all. So it's the first ever climate law, which is here. I think we can go to the slide number 11 already, because there I wanted to show you, maybe it's a little bit difficult to read, but there is still a lot of vague terminology in our Climate Act. For example, in Article 2, which you see in this round graph, there are words in like that the member state shall, at the level of the Union and the national level, take the necessary measures to ensure the joint realization of the objective. but what are necessary measures? How is it achieved? There is a lot we are still a little bit worried about, because we have already now 2021, when this comes into effect, a regulation. The good thing of a regulation, it becomes valid in all member states with a date of publication in the official journal. So that could be, let's say, with all translations in September this year. But then the question is, how do we work with this? There's a lot of vague terminology when we face then, let's say, 8.5 years only, no, 7.5 years, no, 8.5 years to reach our 2030 target. So I'm still very worried that there is a lot of window shopping still going on. When you go to the next slide, again, governance, I also have here shown you there are a lot of reporting obligations. There will be an assessment of union progress and assessment of collective progress of all member states by the Commission. And then there will be, when the Commission, as she has to do under the current governance regulation, when it comes to the renewable targets, the Commission will also continue to take necessary measures. She may come up with new legislative proposals. And they can make, for specific member states, the non-binding recommendations, which is not good enough. So we will have to look into that when it's time to go then in a period, let's say after 2025, into infringement procedures when you have a state who just says nay and is always avoiding change. Now I would like to go to the next slide. That is only giving an overview that this Climate Act or climate regulation is very, very important. Nonetheless, an important step forward within this Fit for, and there under that is this Fit for 55 package. That means the Commission was already since last year screening a lot of major legislation to see if that legislation needs to be reviewed, because it must fit with our 55% target by 2030. And I have put here a little bit, there will come legislation amendments on CO2 pricing. There will come clean energy. Also, we will have we have the RED II directive. We will see in a very short time in June. Most of that will be shown in June. A lot of new proposals of the Commission, and including the Renewable Energy Directive, the RED III, the Energy Efficiency Directive, and the Building Directive, and also the 10E, so the Trans-European Network regulation should be reviewed under these Fit for 55 view. And also on transport, alternative fuel infrastructure directive, and then the CO2 emission standard setting will also be touched. And at the moment, I do not foresee, but we have to be very vigilant, and it counts both ways. In all these legislative proposals, I rather see that the targets will be opened, so that they will say the 32% target for renewables is not enough. So they might then come up with a higher target. We all hope for that. But I'm not sure if they will, in the same aspect, change a lot of things which they have just put 2 years ago in the new directive. We might look all into it and look into some things. For example, in RF, we are discussing, which is pertinent for your conference, we are discussing in a working group a lot on the question of water hydropower, small hydropower and wind power development, and the clash with the habitat and the bird directives. So the clash between species, nature protection, and the need to roll out massively more wind parks and also small hydropower. Maybe small hydro, not massively, that is a different level, but the possibility has to be there. So we may have an interest to put here public service notion into the RED III directive in saying, when you have to balance the common good of protecting the climate versus you may have one remigrating species, which yes, might be at a very specific point in risk, then how does it weigh against replacing fossil fuel emission, which if you make the balance between wind energy and fossil fuel, or water power and fossil fuel and species, I think the equation can only come that it's way above, the risk is way above through coal power plants, for example. So that is which will come. And then we also are discussing at the moment new guidelines for energy and environment. These are regular guidelines. They should have been out end of 2020, but due to Corona and all things, they're only coming now out in the as a draft in the fourth quarter. It's only guidance from the Commission, so it's also the Commission. She decides by herself, but she consults with in consultation procedures, and she consults with member states and parliament. But she decides in the end. And when I say she, is DG Competition in the European Commission. We have had our tough battles with DG Competition, and it's not getting easier because we participated as RF in the first consultation on what should be in the next guidelines on state aid. And we found out that this questionnaire of the Commission hijacked us, the renewable industry, with other CO2 low energy sources. So seems to be there is a concerted action of some interested groups and very rich people from America. I quote Bill Gates here as one of the spearheads to push to get nuclear energy into the guidelines. And at the last round, the guidelines 2014, 2020, the current ones, many member states and RF and many others fought hard that nuclear stays out and stays alone, has to have a single procedure for authorization of state aid to nuclear. Unfortunately, that's another point for another discussion, another day. They are nuclear is a lot sheltered by the reading of the Euratom Treaty at present, by the European Commission, by the European Court, but that's for another day. I only want to say that this clean energy notion comes in, and we do not want that. It will also most probably be tried to get into the Renewable Energy 3 directive, and we will work and fight tooth and nail that it remains a renewable energy directive and not a clean energy directive. So that's, we can go to the next slide. We can go actually to the blue slide, slide 16. There you see the package for your own reading. Unfortunately, there's something on that slide 16 which I forgot to take out, but you see the table of times and what will be done and what has to be reviewed. So with that, Morten and dear colleagues, I'm sure I was too long. I will stop here. Thank you.
Hi, Dörte. It was not too long. It was very informative, and thank you for updating us all with what is going on. We have been a little bit delayed in our program today, so actually you have not exceeded any time limits. So, yeah. So, but anyhow, are there any questions or comments to Dörte Fouquet?
Was clear.
Well, yeah.
It was clear, obviously.
Yeah, it seems so. But anyhow, these questions can be raised, and you can also send an email. You will find all the informations at the end of the conference. Oh, there's a question from. Yeah, so I'd like to see the presentation, but that will be available. We can send it out, I expect. Yes. So that will be available later on. Yes, other comments? Not for the time being. Well, we'll say thank you very much, Dörte, and we hope to see you soon up here at the Folkecenter. Thank you very much.
Very much. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Okay, cheers. Bye.